Hey, Myles here at Tactical Hvye, and welcome to another episode of Force and Force Fridays. Today, what we want to talk about is, does Force and Force training hurt, and preparing for your first Force and Force training session, if you haven't already done so. We have a lot of people who show a lot of interest in Force and Force training. There are a lot of inquiries from all across the nation. People want to fly to a training session on our social media platforms. Everyone constantly asks about Force and Force training, but we see a lot of people who inquire who don't actually go to Force and Force training. And we notice that there's two reasons that stand out the most. One of them I'm just gonna get right out of the way. This is something that you can't control, but it's really about ego. There's a lot of people who don't wanna be weighed and tested in a real two-way range or scenario because it's not like the movies and it's not just like armchair quarterbacking a scenario or a real life incident you've seen in real life or on video. It is very different, very stressful, very overwhelming. There's a lot of things that go on. It's very fast when you're in it. So a lot of people don't go in Force and Force or don't do Force and Force because of that. So if you have that mindset, one thing you have to remember is that a lot of these other students are going in and they don't have experience at all. They're there to learn, and instructors know you're there to learn. Even a lot of instructors, they will run, they're gonna make mistakes too. Situations, scenarios are dynamic. So if you have that mindset, try to get rid of that and just put yourself in there because everyone's gonna be on the same boat. And another reason a lot of people don't wanna do Force and Force is because they think it's going to hurt a lot. And I already mentioned that this video is going to answer the question, does it hurt? So here it is. It depends on your pain tolerance. We have a lot of people who are afraid, but here's the truth. If you've done airsoft or paintball, it's comparable. We actually did a video a few weeks ago, perhaps, where we had our unpaid intern take shots from a simunitions gun as well as airsoft, and it was very comparable. But if you aren't even aware of how airsoft feels, you might still be thinking, okay, does it hurt or not? And the reason why I said it depends is because everyone's pain tolerance is different. It also depends on what you're wearing, what type of protective gear. And the thing is, you do want Force on Force to hurt a little bit because pain is a great teacher. And if you don't feel anything at all, then it becomes truly a game where you're playing and you're not going to react the same way. We have people who, if you're preparing for your first Force and Force class here, come in layers, all right? So if you don't know what the instructor or the class is going to be providing in terms of protective gear, then you want to come in layers. What I mean by that is you might have an outer layer, an outer jacket, you might have a sweater, then a regular shirt. And those three layers are gonna be more than enough for the vast majority of people there. For a lot of people, that might even be too much where they feel absolutely nothing. If you are a role player in a scenario where you're getting shot a lot by students, then it makes sense. You want to really bundle up because you're getting shot at a lot, multiple times by multiple students, one after the other. But if you're the student in the scenario, if you have a high pain tolerance, then perhaps you can get away with even just this, exactly what I'm wearing here, a shirt. You want something. Now, there are different companies, associations there that will, maybe legally it could be that they have, you have to be wearing a chest guard and things like that. But we have seen people train with just shirts, and so they have some barrier over their skin so it doesn't break the skin. So it will hurt, but they have something here. Because if you don't have something, chances are it will break the skin, you'll bleed a little bit. That's about it. They're non-lethal, but it might break the skin, you're gonna bleed. If you feel that you're afraid of that, then pop on a layer. Maybe put a thick sweater. And even, if you want more protection, then put an outer garment. You could even start out that way, the opposite. So start off with 3 layers, an outer garment, a sweater inside, and maybe a shirt, a long sleeve shirt. And then if you feel nothing, then move down. Take off the first layer, then just wear a sweater on your shirt. And if you still want, if you're not feeling anything, then take off the sweater. The main thing here is it's not that bad. A lot of people think because you're using real firearms that have been converted into shooting non-lethal rounds, that's gonna hurt like crazy. But it doesn't really need to, it doesn't really have to. I've been shot many times just walking around. Again, you know, I'll get shot here. I won't even wince. I won't have, there's no expression. It's nothing. So it just depends. If you're the type, again, like I said, you can layer up, layer down as you see fit. Now, when it comes to other protective gear though, so headgear most likely is going to be provided for you, and you don't want to skimp on the headgear. If you are told to bring your own headgear, which might happen, you can get a force and force type of headgear that's going to cover pretty much everything. It will be around the entire head, it'll cover your neck, it might have something that comes down here. But if you get a paintball mask, just some things. The paintball mask can work too, but there are some things to consider here. With a traditional paintball mask, the neck might not be covered as well as the top of your head. There's so many kinds of paintball masks, so you're gonna just have to take a look. Now, if you are afraid your head might get hit, then wearing a cap in reverse, like backwards, and then the paintball mask will be more than enough, because you want at least something. Again, you don't want it to hit bare skin, because then it could actually hurt a lot, or at least break the skin. And then a neck gaiter. Even this that I have here would be good enough, but you can get something a little bit thicker. This is going to stop the rounds from actually breaking the skin. When it comes to your fingers and your hands, this is an area where you want to protect just as much as your head and your neck, because these are bony areas. And when we think about what areas might hurt most when you get shot with a simunition round or force and force round, your hands are one of those areas. Also because when you are shooting one another, typically your hands are up, so there's a good chance your hands are going to get shot. So you need a pair of good quality gloves. You have to consider the amount of protection you have versus how much control or tactile feel you want with your pistol or your training pistol, because the thicker they are, then it's going to be harder to manipulate your firearm. That being said, you might see some people who don't use any gloves at all. And remember, it comes down to pain tolerance. Some people don't mind it if they get shot, some people do. But if you're starting off, do wear gloves. Maybe start off with something a little bit thicker, then you can move down if you want to. I personally wear gloves all the time, even if it's just thin. Again, I don't want something breaking the barrier of my skin. But if you do get shot, you know, I've got shot on the backhand before, and it has swollen up to the size of a golf ball before. Because again, at that time I didn't wear any padding here. I had a very thin glove. I got shot, it popped up, but you know, it wasn't that bad. A little bit of ice, and in a few minutes it was down. But again, these are areas where you generally need more protection: your head, your neck, and your hands. Groin protection is extremely important. You will have some classes, some associations, companies might provide groin protection, others that might not, so you definitely want to have something protecting you there. When it comes to your legs, generally speaking, most people can take the hits on their legs much better. If you get hit in a bony area like a knee, that could hurt a little bit more, but we don't see a lot of people using even knee pads or anything like that. But you're gonna have to base it on, once again, your pain tolerance. If things are very painful, then layer up, meaning you might wear a tighter underlayer, you know, pants here, and then on top of baggy pants, right? And that is going to definitely be more than enough for you. What I've talked to you about in terms of pain management, the kind of like the protective gear that you're going to wear, is assuming that you're doing a force and force class that's an intro, where you're going to be doing more shooting and you're not going to be having close contact with different students or even instructors. There are levels to force and force training. So I do recommend, and you know, as a whole, Tactical Hvye, start off with scenarios where you're just working on problem solving, decision making, and you're just trying to get your gun out and you're engaging just with your gun. Then ultimately work into getting closer and more hands-on, where now you might add a little grappling and things like that. And when it gets to that point, then your gear requirements are going to change, and maybe the classes and the companies you work with are going to provide different gear. There are red suits, there are high-speed suits, where role players might wear really thick protective padding and different types of protective gear so you can actually strike them and shoot them up close. But that's getting ahead of ourselves, but I do want you to know that's out there. So to wrap up this video, yes, force and force does hurt, but you can negate that. I mean, it depends on your pain tolerance, and you can layer up. So there shouldn't be no reason not to do force and force, because you can manage the amount of pain that you're going to feel by the amount of clothing and protective gear that you wear. And if you're doing force and force for the first time and you want to know what to expect, you're going to probably be put in scenarios, again, where there's not a lot of close contact, you're going to be shooting, you're going to get shot, and that's about it. 1 or 2 shots, no one's going to unload a magazine on you. And even if they do, you're going to be all protected with your layers and you having your protective gear. So if you really want to have a feeling of what real life might be like and want to test your skills, your problem solving, decision making in a highly stressful scenario, Force and Force is definitely something you should add to your training regimen. If you have any questions about Force and Force training, whether about protective gear, what to expect, scenarios, so on and so forth, let us know in the comments. And as always, please like, subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.